He walked into Cairo with so much gold that he broke Egypt's economy, not robbed it, not invaded it, just walked through it. He gave away so much gold to beggars and merchants that the price of gold across the entire Mediterranean dropped by 25%. It took Cairo 12 years to recover. His name was Mansa Musa, and the word Mansa means emperor. But that translation doesn't quite capture it. Think something closer to Lord of Lords, King of Kings, the man other kings answered to. He ruled Mali, a West African empire so large it covered roughly the same ground as Western Europe today. And if you adjust for the modern economy, the goods he controlled, the gold and salt he taxed, the land and labor that was his. Historians estimate his net worth at around $400 billion. Not 400 million. Billion. Jeff Bezos, at his peak, was worth around 200 billion. Mansa Musa may have been worth double that. But here's the thing that nobody talks about when they bring up that number. He didn't just have the money, he used it. In ways that were brilliant, reckless, generous, and strange. He bought things that still exist today, and he destroyed things that can never be recovered. This is the story of what the richest human being who ever lived actually did with his wealth, and what it cost the world. To understand Musa, you need to understand what Mali actually was. In the 1300s, half the world's gold came from West Africa, specifically from the mines in and around the Mali Empire. Gold wasn't rare in Mali, it was everywhere. Alluvial deposits, that means gold mixed into riverbeds and soil. Miners pulled it out with their hands. The same was true for salt. Salt sounds trivial to us. We pour it on food without thinking. But in the medieval world, salt was survival. Salt preserved meat. Salt prevented disease. Salt was in some places worth more than gold by weight. Mali sat directly between the two, gold to the south, salt to the north. And Musa taxed everything that moved between them, every caravan, every merchant. Every gram of either material crossing his territory paid a toll to the palace. Picture a toll booth, except the toll booth stretches 3,000 miles. That was his empire. And Musa inherited it. He didn't build it from scratch. He inherited it from his predecessor, Abu Bakr II, who, by the way, disappeared on an ocean voyage, trying to find the edge of the Atlantic. That's its own story. But Musa took what Abu Bakr left behind and made it larger. He conquered 24 cities. He expanded the empire's borders to the Atlantic coast in the west and deep into the Sahara in the north. He was a general as much as he was a king, but wars cost money, and Musa had money. So he fought, and he won. By the time he was in his prime, somewhere around his late 30s, early 40s, he was the most powerful individual on the surface of the earth. And then he decided to go on a pilgrimage. The Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Every Muslim who is physically and financially able is expected to make the journey to Mecca at least once in their life. Musa was devout, genuinely devout, not performing for the public devout. He built mosques, he funded scholars, he studied the Quran. So in 1324 he set off for Mecca. He did not travel light. His caravan stretched, by contemporary accounts, over 12 miles. Let that settle for a second. 12 miles of people, animals, luggage, and treasure moving across the Sahara. The numbers we have are probably exaggerated. Medieval chroniclers were not statisticians. But even the conservative estimates are astonishing. Somewhere between 8,000 and 60,000 people. Thousands of camels, each carrying gold dust. Hundreds of elephants. And here's the thing that matters psychologically. Musa chose this. He could have made the Hajj quietly, privately. He had the power to ensure safe passage with a small escort. Instead, he chose spectacle. Why? Part of it was security. A massive caravan was harder to rob. Part of it was logistics. feeding that many people required that scale of supply. Chain, but part of it was ego. Musa understood something that most leaders of his era did not. Reputation was a foreign policy instrument. The known world didn't know Mali existed. After that caravan crossed the Sahara and arrived in Cairo, they did. He arrived in Cairo and refused to bow before the Sultan. An advisor talked him down and he made a half-bow. Kneeling to God alone, he said, "Not to any man." The Sultan, to his credit, let it go, and then the spending began. Musa handed out gold in the streets, in the mosques, to scholars and beggars alike. He paid for everything in gold. He gave gold gifts to every official he met. Within weeks, the gold market of Cairo was flooded. And gold, like anything else, loses value when there's too much of it. Merchants who had been storing gold for years watched their savings collapse. Property prices lurched. Trade routes adjusted. Lenders who had built businesses on stable gold values were suddenly insolvent. One man, walking through Cairo, being generous, had destabilized one of the most important economies in the medieval world. He reportedly tried to fix it on the way home. He borrowed gold back from Egyptian merchants at high interest rates, deliberately to pull gold out of circulation and restore scarcity. Whether it worked is debatable. What's clear is that he knew what he'd done and he tried to undo it. That detail is important. It tells you who Musa actually was. He wasn't oblivious. He wasn't simply careless. He was a man who understood power and consequence, but who still sometimes moved faster than consequence could keep up with him. The city of Timbuktu. You've heard that name. It's become a metaphor for the end of the world. Somewhere impossibly far and impossibly remote. But in the 14th century under Mansa Musa, Timbuktu was the opposite of remote. It was one of the most sophisticated cities on earth. Musa funded it. Specifically, he funded its mosques, its universities, and its libraries. He brought an architect back from Cairo, a man named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, and commissioned him to redesign the city from the ground up. New mosques, new structures, new designs using mud brick construction techniques that were revolutionary for the region. The Jingareba Mosque still stands today. Musa paid for it in 1327. You can walk through it now. You can touch walls he paid to build. His libraries collected manuscripts on theology, law, science, and history. Timbuktu became a center of Islamic scholarship that attracted students from across North Africa and the Middle East. At its peak, the University of Sankore had around 25,000 students. To put that in context, Oxford University, founded around the same era, had a few thousand. Musa didn't build an empire, he built a civilization. And this is where his psychology gets genuinely interesting, because he clearly believed in something beyond mere accumulation. He wasn't just hoarding gold, he was deploying it, converting raw wealth into institutions, into knowledge, into things that would outlast him. Most tyrants build monuments to themselves. Musa built libraries. Most powerful men of his era used education as a tool of control. Musa funded independent scholars who sometimes disagreed with him. That's unusual. That's genuinely unusual. He also, to be clear, had absolute power over enslaved people. Slavery was embedded in the Mali Empire's economy. Some of his caravan were enslaved people carrying gold across the desert. We cannot separate the civilization he built from the system that paid for it. That's the uncomfortable truth at the center of his story. The libraries exist because the labor was not free. Now, the strange part, because Musa wasn't only a sophisticated patron of scholarship, he was also, by any modern measure, magnificently eccentric. He bought an entire city because he liked the look of it. Gao, in present-day Mali, was a prosperous trading city that he conquered. Standard empire building. But he became so fond of it that he brought its 2 princes back to Mali as, essentially, hostages. guaranteed political loyalty through proximity. Then he built them a palace, not a prison, a palace. And he gave the princes gold and education and court positions. Because Musa believed, genuinely seemed to believe, that generosity was a more durable form of control than force. That's not kindness. That's a very sophisticated political calculation dressed up as kindness. He spent extraordinary sums on architecture, not because it was functional, but because he wanted Mali to look like what he felt it was. He commissioned poets to memorize his accomplishments. In an oral culture, the poet was the newspaper, the historian, and the PR firm, all in one. He reportedly became so obsessed with gold-plated architecture late in his life that he had floors and walls covered in gold leaf. Not painted gold, actual gold. His throne room, by accounts of visitors, required squinting. He owned more gold than most countries that exist today, and he spent it the way someone spends money when they genuinely cannot imagine running out. Because he couldn't. The mines kept producing, the caravans kept moving, the taxes kept arriving, until they didn't. Musa died around 1337. He'd ruled for approximately 25 years. The exact date is uncertain because medieval African history was not prioritized by the European scholars who later catalogued the world's history. That's worth sitting with. A civilization of this scale, libraries, universities, international trade networks, sophisticated governance, and the date of its emperor's death is listed in most history books as circa. After Musa, the empire held together for a generation. His son Maghan took over, and things began to fray. Within 50 years, Mali faced raids from the north, internal succession conflicts, and the loss of several key trading cities. Within a century, it had fractured. The gold was still in the ground. The mines hadn't run out. But the institutions hadn't been built to outlast the man who built them. The libraries of Timbuktu survived longer. For centuries, scholars kept the manuscripts, but over time, the manuscripts were hidden, buried, scattered. Scholars protecting them from invaders, from fire, from the slow erosion of instability. Today, hundreds of thousands of those manuscripts have been recovered. Many have not. The knowledge that Musa paid to produce, that students traveled across the Sahara to acquire, some of it is gone. Not all of it, but some. And that, maybe more than the collapsed gold market in Cairo, is the real cost of what happened after Musa. He built something extraordinary, and he built it without the redundancy to survive him. The richest person in history was not a European king. He was not a tech founder or an oil baron. He was a West African emperor who walked through Cairo and accidentally broke the economy of the medieval world. He was a man who built universities and employed poets and covered his floors in gold leaf. He was brilliant and reckless and genuinely devoted and politically calculating, sometimes all at once, and almost nobody learns his name in school. The history we tell shapes the history we remember. Musa understood that. That's why he hired the poets.